What's up, everybody? I wanted to put this webinar together for some folks that have been reaching out asking how to get into the sport, how to fish North Carolina, where to go, just pass along the information, for free. There's been a lot of people that have given me a lot of advice and pointed me in the right direction over the last 7 years, 8 years since I got into fly fishing. And so just trying to pass it along and point you in the right direction. So, different people have been asking me where I've been fishing at, and for the most part, most of the pictures on my Instagram page are hatchery supported fish or wild fish. Very few of those fish on there are private water trips, but there are a couple fish on there. But if you see something that you're like, I want to know where this fish was caught out of, for the most part, I'll give you the area where it was caught. Probably won't say the exact hole it was caught, but I'll be glad to pass it along to those people that are good stewards of the river, care about the environment, and just all around just enjoy being outside, being on the river. So if I give you a spot to fish, you got to make a deal with me and tell me that you're going to pick up some trash, either some beer cans or some worm cans. There's always plenty of those out there. So anyways, we'll get started and give you a couple of tips on how to break into fly fishing in North Carolina. And so if you can see my screen here, the website that I'm on the ncwildlife.org website, and I'm under the fishing tab right here. And then the hatcheries and stocking tab is the best place for you to start. So, I'm not going to get into licensing and the laws and all that kind of stuff. You can do the research and figure out what kind of license you need and purchase that. But if you've already got one, you're just looking to get some more information on where to go, then get to this page here and I'll walk you through how I walk through setting up my trips for the weekend. Some people like to just go out there and wing it and just get outside. Sometimes I'll do that, but for the most part, I like to plan out my trip, depending on if I'm going fish a half day or a whole day or 2 or 3 days. That's really the starting point of how I'm planning my trip. And so if I know I got 4 hours on the water, then there's very few places for me to get out of Charlotte and get to for a half day. So usually if that's the case, then I'm going straight up the I-77 corridor, and that would probably be the closest area for me, other than South Mountains, but not a big fan of that area. But if you're planning your trip, then click on this cold water daily stocking update. See, as you can see here, August 2nd through August 5th. And the only county that was stocked on today, Thursday, August 5th, Transylvania, Davidson River, hatchery supported. So, and then I'll call these the green signs, but just click on it and it'll give you the regulations. But you just, as long as you know the stream types, make sure you're paying attention to where you're at. Sometimes some of the streams will switch it up on you halfway up the river, and the next thing you know, you're in fishing a different kind of water, and you still think that you're fishing the same regulations. But Davidson River, that's a good area, good river to fish. Had a lot of good fish come out of there, a lot of tough fish. But for the most part, that's a good day trip area. You can get to Davidson River area, Brevard, 2.5 hours from Charlotte, which is where I'm traveling from. And this is probably the first step that I go through, or second step after I've picked out the general area. I just like to get on here and see what areas are stocked. I don't necessarily will go to this area if there's something on here, but it's pointing you in the right direction of where the most recent fish are. If you're going to just catch and release, you want to get on some numbers, this is the best place to start out at. And then once you're out of that page, if you want to click on the cold water daily stocking update here. Oh, same one. Let me back out, click to the wrong one. Let's see. Cold water stocking by county. This is probably the second best place that I go to. And you'll scroll down, click on the maps here. So a lot of people that have just moved to North Carolina, they're not familiar with the counties. This is all the counties that you need to know for trout fishing in North Carolina. So Buncombe, I like to use Buncombe County as like the center point for my reference. So whenever I refer to going, out towards the tip of North Carolina, I'm referring getting out towards Jackson, Macon, Clay, Cherokee, Graham, Swain County. All those counties are going to be, for me, about 4 hours to get there. And so, this is kind of a long journey for me from Charlotte. I'm not willing to do this trip in a day. If I've got a minimum of one night, I'll consider it. But for the most part, if Charlotte was right around this area here, I'm going up the I-77 corridor, and I'm either fishing this area or right in here. So if you want to get 2 hours, 2 hours from Charlotte is going to put you in Brevard, Transylvania County. 2 hours from, depending on what part of Charlotte you're getting to, Boone, it's going to be in Watauga. If you're looking to fish around the Asheville, Mount Mitchell area, you can hit that in about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I like this range here. If you were looking at a mountain range, the highest peaks that are going along are sort of right along this direction here. And for those of you that are chasing the brook trout, that they got to get up pretty good ways above about 3,000 feet is what I like to get to. And so, that's how I break down how far I'm going to travel in a day and sort of start to pinpoint the areas that I'm going to target for fish. I don't really target specifically for species, but some days I do like to go after I call it the Grand Slam. So rainbow, brook, trout. You can definitely do that easy in a day trip here if you plan it out. But this is the best map that you can pick up for planning out your day trip. And let's see, you clicked on one of these counties here, Wilkes County. We use that one for an example. I'm not a big fan of the area around there, but it does give you the master stocking list. So if you put whatever county you clicked on there, it's going to pull up every hatchery supported stream in the county that you click on. It's going to tell you what types of trout were dumped in the river. It's going to tell you the months they were going to be dumped in the river. So, especially in the summertime, which is August now, I'm looking for areas that are a little bit higher water, and that's few and far between depending on the weather conditions in the summertime. But like July here, so you see a couple of these rivers don't have hardly any fish dumped in them. And between, putting, the state puts the information out on the website, the locals see the truck running down the river, dumping the trout out. For the most part, just me personally, if I saw this river had 82 fish dumped in the month of July, and there was 10 locals that were keeping 7 fish a day, they just pulled out 70 of those. And the hatchery supported streams, there's always going to be a couple stragglers left in there. They're never always going to be called out, but for the most part, if it's a hatchery supported stream, you really need to get on the river really close to the dates that they're stocking the fish in the river. Whenever I first started into the fly fishing and trying to figure out where the fish were at, I fished a lot of hatchery supported streams, and I got what did he say, zeroed out pretty much most of those trips. And it wasn't the fact that, it was part of the fact that I was new, trying to figure it out, figure out where the fish were at, what they were biting, that kind of thing. But really, I had a steep learning curve because I didn't realize that most of the fish were called out. So if you're new to the sport, you really need to figure out specifically, like not just the months that they were dumped in the river, but you need to go back to that first resource that I gave you and figure out the days that are being stocked. And you need to plan your trip, within, I'd like to say 3 to 7 days around that time frame. I've caught fish, 3-4 weeks out from the time the trout have been dumped in the river, especially this year, 2021. I think COVID has kept a lot of people off the water. And so some of these hatchery supported streams are fishing a little bit better than they would in years past. And that's just based off my personal experience. But, you can go to every one of these counties up here. Transylvania County is one of my favorites, and we'll pull the list up here so you can see the different forks of the French Broad. There's a lot of fish dumped out in some of these creeks. And another thing that I like to do is, you can see the numbers here for, let's see, put my tool up here so I can draw. Let's see if this will do it. So you can see the numbers here. It looks like this is a lot of fish. If you look at East Fork, 1,000, 500, it looks like a lot of fish. And yes, that is a lot of fish. And what I'm looking for is how many miles were these fish spread out in, because like this one, so almost 11 miles of stream to dump in, let's see, 500,000, 1,500, almost 2,000 fish. So 2,040 fish spread out over 10 miles. I like to stack the odds in my favor. And the way I do that is I fish more of the streams that are lower mileage, I guess you could say. So 3.7 miles, and then there's 7,040 fish in that stretch in March, April, May. So in 5 months, I mean, no matter how many locals are catching the fish out, there's going to be fish in there. You fish the pools, you got to pull off where everybody else is pulling off at, give the pool 5, 10, 20 minutes of fishing, and then work that stream up 100, 200, 300 yards upstream. But most of those fish, when they hit the water, some of them are just hit the road, move upstream, get behind what makes it comfortable, and then start acclimating to the river. But this is just a little insight into how I specifically target the areas, and then look at the numbers of fish in the river, and then figure out the mileage as far as how long the river is. So again, Transylvania, that's a good county there. If you go up into the forest, then just be careful in some of the wild streams. Had some bad instances with some yellow jackets up there a couple years back, but luckily good folks at one of the outfitter shops there saw me and saw that I was in some type of distress, and were able to get some Benadryl into my system pretty quickly. So that trip, you're in the woods, you're out there, it's kind of dangerous, especially if you're by yourself. So if you're allergic to something, just take your Benadryl with you. That's one thing I had to start doing, was carrying my Benadryl in the truck with me, so that way at least I'm within walking distance. And then most of the time I have a couple that I can pop into my mouth pretty quickly if something were to happen. But let's back out of this page, and I'll take you through the rest of the steps that I'm going for. And again, most of this information is public information. I'm not looking at information that's not available to the general public. I guess once you start adding on some experience with the information that's available on the website here, you can really start to make some progress, and you can really start to see some results in your fishing skills and catching bigger fish and more wild fish. And really that's kind of to the point where I'm at now, is I just like taking people. Again, I'll be glad to take you. I do charge for my trips, but I'll put you on some fish. We'll at least give you a shot at catching some fish. Whether or not you actually catch anything, that's the reason why they call it fishing, but I can definitely stack the odds in your favor. And so if you're just wanting to get out there and sort of get introduced to the sport, I'll be glad to take you, be glad to help you out, and definitely get linked up with your local Trout Unlimited chapter. Those folks have been awesome, especially the folks in Rocky River Trout Unlimited in Charlotte. Those folks have been fantastic, and they're just good all around people to hang around, get some information out of, and enjoy the sport together. But once you get this cold water stocking by county figured out, you can really start to make some progress, like I said. But this website here is my go-to website. I'll back out one page here, and let's see, if you're into the catch and release stuff, you're probably already aware of all these resources. But for the new folks, delayed harvest is really the time of the year where you can really improve your skills, figure out some of these fish that have been in the water for a while. They're a little bit harder to catch. And so you're really going to have to step your game up in comparison to catching some of the regular hatchery supported fish that have been in the river for, 3 days, 7 days. This is definitely probably my favorite stream types to fish is, there's always fish in these delayed harvest streams. Of course, there's the poaching that goes on for the most part, but if you're going to some of these really popular delayed harvest streams, you're going to catch fish. If you're not catching fish, then there's probably something that needs to be tweaked in your process, whether it's different flies, having better flies, adding more weight to your flies, or just fish with a guide. Fish with plenty of guides, and they've been phenomenal in just giving you that extra little boost of information, that sort of trade secret that they've just figured out through experience and being on the water. It's definitely a way to speed up the learning curve for fly fishing. But whenever I'm going into these places, like I said, I like to travel. I like to combine my fishing with a little bit of local area, like find a little restaurant, a little hole in the wall. So that's one of the things about going with a guide is, I don't just do, lunch, snacks, sandwich. Sometimes I'll take people to one of the local areas. Avery County's got some good local spots to eat at and enjoy yourself up there. Ashe County is known for cheese. I definitely don't eat cheese while I'm fishing, but I do stop and enjoy some of the local restaurants up there. If you're into the brewery scene, that's something that you can combine your trips, your fly fishing trips. I mean, there's so many little micro breweries that are popping up literally in all these little small towns. That's one thing I love about the mountains of North Carolina is that the towns that are up there, they're really making a comeback as far as tourism, recreation, that kind of thing. You don't just have to go to Asheville to experience, recreation as far as the city, that kind of thing. Some of these smaller towns like Morganton is an up and coming town. A lot of the real estate up there is growing pretty good too. But let me get out of here. Let me hop back on to, let's see, 2021 trout. This is the master schedule here. This is one of my favorites. So now whether or not the North Carolina wildlife actually sticks to their plan as far as the dates that they're getting these trout into the water, that's a completely different story. I don't know, but at least they're giving you some information as far as, this is 28 pages of 2021's master schedule, and it's broken down by county. So if you already know what county you're going to, you can figure out your trips and plan your trips around these specific dates. But this one goes all the way from Allegheny County all the way down to, it's Transylvania, but then it's got the Blue Ridge Parkway here and the Limbo River. So Limbo River is a great river. A lot of scenery on that river. A lot of good fish in there as well. But and that's Avery County too. They're part of Avery County. That's somewhere where those good restaurants are that I was telling you about. But let's see, once you get this figured out with the master counties, the counties that you're going to go to, target the individual streams, and then plan your trip around it. Then I'm figuring out, okay, I've got this trip on the calendar. And then at that point, I moved from deciding where I'm going to go. And at that point, I'm looking at more of the conditions that are going to be like weather, rain, what is the flows of the river. I don't do a lot of big water fishing, so I'm not keeping tabs on the release schedules for the tuck or the Nantahala. I don't pay too much attention to that because I'm not fishing a lot of those big water areas. I'm more of a small water guy. I like the small creeks, the mid-sized creeks, the ones that you can just wade through pretty easily. But once I know the date I'm fishing, the weather, about a day or two out, I'm looking up there to the weather. I'm calling some of the local guide shops, asking them, what's biting, what is conditions like, what are the go-to flies. And for the most part, you're going to have to do that when you first start getting into the sport and figuring out what they're hitting. Definitely lean on the guides and the outfitter shops to figure out what you need, what flies you need. But then once you sort of get into the game a little bit and start figuring out what the fish will bite, you're not really leaning on those guide shops as much, because you've sort of got your own approach that you've built over the years. And so, once I got the weather conditions, the flows, and the area that I'm fishing, then at that point, the only other thing I'll do is I'll put together a list of maybe 3 different rivers and streams that I can hit at one time within about a 20 to 30-minute radius. And that's just because I've been to so many streams on the weekends, and for whatever reason, I got there a little bit late. And late to me is like 8 o'clock. If you're not there by 8 o'clock, then you're going to be fishing the leftover waters. I like getting there first thing, getting on the water, super early whenever the sun comes up, and be one of the first ones that fish upstream. So at least it's giving the fish a little bit of about 10, 12 hours of no pressure anyway. But if you're there at 9 o'clock, most of the time you're going to be fishing leftover water. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to fish more of weekday trips. And so sometimes you can't always make it happen, but for the most part, Sunday's a little bit slower than Saturday is. But it's not always about catching the fish and being the first one on the river. Sometimes I like giving up a spot and letting somebody else fish in front of me. Once you start catching fish and fishing a lot, then at that point it's more about just enjoying yourself on the river and making it a trip out of your schedule. Just getting away from the office, getting away from the hustle and bustle of Charlotte, and just enjoying yourself, getting out there and just having a good time. But really, one of the last things that I do, once I've got the area picked out, and this is how I pick out the couple of streams that are within 20, 30 minutes of each other, is I go on to this NC fishing areas and trout waters map. And this is really my favorite tool of all the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. This is really best map that you can get as far as a digital map, that is, unless there's something else and I haven't come across it. But what I'll do is I'll pick out the area. So let's say, for example, I am working the I-77 corridor, and that would put me up here near the Stone Mountain area. And let's see, so Stone Mountain area is right here. And what I was telling you earlier about the mountain range and all the higher peaks sort of working up here, you can follow the range up here. Like I said, use this if you're a brook hunter, if you're a brook trout chaser, use that. 5,000 feet, you can use that for a reference point. There's plenty of 5,000 foot ranges up there. I like to get up 3,000 feet. I'm not a big fan of this area here with the Stone Mountain area. It's good if you're there first thing or fishing the weekdays. Stone Mountain has kind of been mean to me over the last couple of years. I lost a nice pair of Coach sunglasses on the stream, but that just comes with the territory. But they do a good job of limiting the traffic in the state park for weekend trips. So definitely, if you're going to head to that area or any other state park where there's fishing, you got to get there earlier the better. Beat the crowd, beat the folks that are coming in there to go hiking and stuff. But within Stone Mountain, there's a couple of different wild creeks. I've never been a fan of the wild creeks in Stone Mountain, but there's definitely a couple of stragglers in there that are wild. But I'm not a big fan of Stone Mountain area. I like working over into Ashe County here around West Jefferson, around that area. There's a ton of water in Ashe County and a ton of fish that get stocked out in there, but most of the water that's in Ashe County, I would say, is private water. So if you got some spots up there that are private that local folks will let you fish, then you're really onto something there. And that goes, it's the same thing throughout all of North Carolina. There's so much water that's up in the mountains that's private. And I have had luck with asking landowners or homeowners that have a little stretch on the river if they're open to letting me catch a few fish. And I just, I don't keep the fish. I just let them let them go back for the most part, especially if it's on private land. But this area here, this is a good, I would say hour or less than 2 hours for a day trip from Charlotte. And if you're working some of the other areas, I don't spend time in South Mountain or the Stone Mountain area and then work all the way down to Boone. That's too much of a drive for me. But I'll definitely work 2 counties at a time. So maybe Stone Mountain and Ashe County in a day trip. That's an option for you. But after I'm getting at this point, I'm 7-8 years deep into it, so I've got a couple of different go-to spots, different go-to trips that I can work out, like Boone area, and then down into Avery County, and then some of the other areas that you can see on the map here. So do your research. Green Streams, hatchery supported. All the blue lines that you see here is gonna be wild water. I will say this: there's a lot of blue lines on like public mountain game lands where they're not. They should really take them off of the map, because they're really just ditches with a water source on them. There's no trout in there, but because it's public mountain lands, then that's what makes it I guess register on this map here. But if you click on the little dots, it'll tell you the regulations for the area. It'll tell you what the trout waters are. So the button I just clicked, it highlighted all of the waters on the Pisgah National Forest. And then there's a lot of good fishing in the Pisgah Forest. I love the Pisgah Forest, and I'm thankful that some people decided to steward it and turn it into a recreational area, because if it wasn't for the National Forest, a lot of my fishing would be non-existent, and I'd be dependent on fishing the hatchery streams. So for the most part, those resources between the map here, the stocking schedule, and the the numbers of how many fish are stocked in there, that's really all you need to get. You need the area, you need to plan your trip as far as having backup spots, you need to know the weather. Don't get caught out in some of these mountain ranges with storms, because there's a lot of flash thunderstorms that pop up sometimes. So be careful, be safe out on the water, pick up the trash, pick up the beer cans, worm cans, and just be a good steward so we can all enjoy this together. And hopefully you got something out of this webinar as far as being able to plan your trip better. And again, I do take folks with me for a fee with the guide, but I'll show you a couple pictures that I've done over the last couple of years. We don't always catch massive fish. We don't catch big, 25-inch plus, wild trout here in North Carolina as much. They're there. They're just few and far between. But, if you can pull out a, 20 fish a day, which for most people, that's not a lot of fish. I mean, you're talking 7,500, 125 fish days for some of these guys. But, if I'm catching 25 fish a day, that's a good day for me. I'm not asking for a whole lot. I'm not going to spend 12 hours on the river, but, if you want a good 4-hour trip or a half-day trip, I can definitely do that for you. If you want to do a full-day trip, we can hop out a couple of different spots, try out a couple of different stream types, wild water, hatchery. Just depends on what you're looking for. I'm a big Euro nympher, Czech nympher, as they call it. So that's really my go-to fishing style. I'll do some dry fly fishing, but if you're looking to, increase numbers, for me, I love fishing the Euro style. I mean, that's just sort of a go-to for me. But we do fish dry droppers and do pretty well with that too. So a couple fish that we pulled out of here. This river here was a stream north of Asheville. That was a November trip, and so we did pretty well on that one. This was the same river. That was a good, nice little fish there. Some good color on it. We're fishing most of the time a 10.5 foot 2-weight or 3-weight, depending on where we're at. But once you get hooked on the Euro style, the chances of you fishing the dry fly as much really go down, unless you're on just a wild creek with some natives. That's always fun. But a couple different areas. This was another public stream. This was a national forest stream little wild trout there. Nothing special, but hey, if you catch some wild trout, look at the par marks on it. It's always a good time. I love checking the fins because all the fish are, they got their own little distinct marks on them. They're distinct colors. It's all different. But this was a stock rookie and took a big streamer, took me downstream a couple hundred yards, but we ended up getting it to the net. So this was a couple years ago. And believe it or not, this fish here was a wild fish on a public hatchery supported stream that I never in a million years would have expected this fish to be in here. I have probably only caught one or two other fish that even compare with that one on the color scale as far as the red dots. But some of the hatchery supported streams, they're kind of undercover wild streams, and a lot of people don't even fish them because they think they're nothing but hatchery supported. But there are a couple wild fish in there, so that was a great fish there. A little native brookie we pulled out of some higher elevation streams. This one was a good time. Real, we're fishing light tippet, real small dry flies. That's what this one took. But this one was same stream, just different part. So if you can see the just the comparison of the colors, one was a little bit lighter, and the other one was a little bit got the nice orange fins on it. Great fish. This one doesn't look that big in the picture, but was probably a 10-inch plus native, which I don't catch a whole lot of those. But when you do, it's a real trophy for North Carolina. So if you catch those, please just throw them back so somebody else can enjoy them. That's the real lure of the fly fishing is chasing the natives, the little specks as they call them, and just enjoying the creation that's out there. So this was a catch and release stream. Most of you probably fished it. This one was on the Davidson, and probably one of my personal best as far as that river goes. That's an extremely difficult river for me to fish, but every once in a while you can catch one of these big boys out of there. And another little native, little wild that we pulled out, small little stream. And if you get a chance, fish the Cherokee waters. Everybody needs to go fish Cherokee at least 2 or 3 times. You need to experience the Raven Fork, the trophy water there. Sometimes it can be a bit disappointing, but the guides that are in Cherokee are phenomenal. There's Michael Bradley's up there in Cherokee. He's a phenomenal angler. I follow a lot of his stuff and get a lot of teaching from him. So that's a great area to fish. Plenty of water, and from Charlotte, you can get there in about 3 hours. But here's a little wild that we pulled out of the national forest, and that was a good all-around day. We didn't catch a lot of fish, but we did catch 10, 15 fish. They were all wild, good colors on them, nice little spots. And so this was a hatchery supported stream, good area. A lot of people are going to be fishing this area on the weekends, but you probably recognize the bridge in the background. And again, if you want to fish with me, I'll be glad to take you. I charge for it, but just come out, enjoy the time that we can spend together, enjoy the water together. And again, I hope this webinar has been beneficial for you, giving out a lot of good advice as far as where to go, how to get into the sport. And if you just need somebody to hold your hand per se, I'll be glad to take you. And I look forward to either seeing some of you on the water or following your pages on Instagram, or even fishing with you on a guided trip. So again, thanks, take care, steward the river, take care of it, and we'll talk soon.